Well, one of the BBC's kind of reasons for existing has always been about giving the world information about the UK, but giving the UK information about the world. So being one of those parts of the landscape that kind of brings the world together, if you like. One of our mottos is, let nation speak unto nation. Well, it's a rather old-fashioned way of putting it. But I think as we move into that new digital world, that role's magnified, because we can do it in so many different ways, particularly online. And of course, our audiences around the world can participate in that conversation and that debate about issues and ideals and values and everything else that happen to be held by people in the UK, that we actually can hear from our audience in that debate in a way that in the traditional broadcast world it was much more us proclaiming things to them, information, stories, whatever. So I think it's quite an exciting time for the BBC, and because of its global reach and the fact that it broadcasts not just in English but in I think 27 different languages, it's got a kind of the ability to kind of speak in lots of different ways and lots of different voices to lots of different kinds of parts of the audience in different countries, and crucially to hear what they have to say back. And there are some fantastic debate programs that we do, interactive debate programs that run across all our platforms on our world service. And also on our commercial international news channel, BBC World News. So I think it's quite an exciting time and a changing time where it becomes less of a sort of one-way relationship and much more a two-way conversation. Oh, well, our primary function is to serve the licence fee payer. They're the people that actually pay predominantly. They're the people that pay for the content that is shown on BBC outlets. So primarily we have to satisfy that licence fee payer appetite for whatever it is that they want. But they are a very curious audience, they want to know about the world. And so, when we're covering stories abroad and bringing those home, that's a real service to the licence fee payer. And similarly, the world is very curious about life in the UK and what's happening, what it's like. My previous job was on the Olympics, and one of the really interesting things was, the different perception of Britain that people got through watching the coverage of the Olympic Games and what was happening in the UK. And that wasn't the BBC saying, we want to tell you things about Britain. It just happened because when you cover a big event and you cover Britain, people learn about that country, and sometimes they learn surprising things. And they certainly did in 2012, that we were a kind of young, modern, vibrant country, we're a very multicultural country, a kind of less stiff upper lip and more cheering madly and wildly, and lots of other things that are a bit surprising to the sort of, traditional impression of Britain. But that wasn't because the BBC set out to do that, it just happens because we cover all the big national events that happen in the UK and all the news that happens. I mean, I honestly don't think that the platform has made much difference. I think it's just, a mechanism by which people access our content. And, when we lived in a world where we just had television and radio, people would say, we love what you do, or we don't like what you do. And they'd tell us in equally strongly and forthright terms, however they accessed our content. And the only difference that there is with the digital world is that, one, we actively encourage people to email us and tweet us and send them their views and their content in a way that people would have to kind of write a letter and get a stamp and post in their post box in years gone by. So it's kind of easier for that conversation to happen, and we encourage that. And that it's easier for the audience to do. So, you get a lot more feedback from the audience than you used to. But I can't say I've kind of noticed a big change in whether it's, positive or negative. Sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative. And, sometimes we do a great job of covering a story, and sometimes our audience tells us that, we didn't explain something very well or whatever. And, you've got to welcome that. You've got to welcome the audience's opinions. Okay, I mean, I think things have changed an awful lot, but in some ways they haven't changed very much yet. I think we're at the beginning of blurring those silos with different roles. So, traditionally you've had a journalist, talking about online journalism here, you've had a journalist, you've had a designer, and you've had a developer that writes code. And those are 3 jobs, and 3 different people do them. At the moment, what we're doing is bringing those people together and bringing them together with our television designers as well, and creating what we call visual journalism, and getting people to understand each other's platform and each other's medium, and experimenting together in that kind of new space where those platforms meet, you know, on tablets and in motion graphics, in virtual reality, and those sorts of areas. I think, you know, as you know, this industry becomes more and more digital, and digital becomes less new but more of a mature kind of environment, just as telly was once, you know, like amazing, and now it's like, oh, telly. You know, as that matures, and as people who are, you know, the students of today become the journalists of tomorrow, they will arrive with, you know, they may arrive with a specialism, like I'm primarily editorial, but I also know how to code, or I'm primarily a designer, but I also know how to code, or I'm primarily a journalist, but I'm quite, you know, good at basic design, and I have a lot to say in the design of stuff. And I think it's that blurring of the roads, it's the next stage. There aren't that many people around with those different kind of skill sets online at the moment. There are obviously lots, but they're not, you know, in huge, vast numbers. I think that's only a matter of time. So I think, you know, if you look in 10 years' time, the kinds of people that will be employed will be, you know, with very broad skill sets, but still potentially with a specialism, but with a big awareness of everything else. I mean, our graphic designers, they do need to have editorial awareness in the news environment. You know, they have to have that kind of knowledge, otherwise, you know, they could put, you know, the wrong image on, or not understand that something's very sensitive. We may not be asking them to edit the evening news, but we are asking them to have, you know, pretty, you know, developed sense of editorial, you know, standards. So you may have a specialism, but you'll probably have 2 or 3 sub-specialisms as well, you know, things that you are quite good at, as opposed to really, really red hot at. And I think that's the next stage. At the moment, we're mainly bringing those people together to work together, rather than saying there's a new breed of people who have all that in them in one bundle.